we say the 3 Ps. If it's good for the patient, the parent, and the practice, we should always do it. And if a kid is coming in and they're just coming in for a cleaning and they need sealants, which take us 8 minutes, 4 minutes, why reschedule them? Just do it. It doesn't cost the parent any money. It's good for the patient. If you know they only show up 70% of the times, that means 30% of the times they're not coming back. So it's those kind of things. It's good for the patient. It's good for the parent. It's good for the practice. They don't have to take off work. We get a little bit more revenue because of it. But the fact is that we're helping out the kid, and we want to make sure that that we're creating those healthy habits that last a lifetime.
Welcome back. Today I'm joined by Ray Caruso. Ray has over 30 years experience in the dental industry, holding multiple executive leadership positions at prestigious DSOs. For the past 7 years, Ray has been at the helm of Lone Peak Dental as their CEO. Ray also happens to be a musician and is the co-founder of the Rock the Benefit, a nonprofit concert taking place in Colorado, benefiting the Denver's Alzheimer's Association. Ray, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for letting me join your podcast, Mike. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to have you on. You know, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile. I kind of stalk everybody before we do a podcast recording. I wanted to go like all the way back for a second. I noticed that you started your career in dental in the Army. Is that a path that you would recommend others take as well?
Well, anytime that you can serve your country and learn, travel, and be a part of something bigger than you are, I would totally recommend it. I don't know if I would recommend being a dental assistant in the Army as the path to being a CEO, but it certainly worked for me. I would venture to guess that I'm the only one, although I do know Josh Gwynn, and he was also in the military in the vision part. And he was the CEO of Hero for a while. So it worked for 2 people anyway.
That's awesome. We have actually our enterprise sales director, Carlos, who runs our enterprise division. He started with dental in the Navy. So I know now a third person as well that has kind of made a career after launching that way. Speaking of, folks that are in our organization, I just have to say, we have a mutual friend, Johnny Adams, who, does a lot of our enterprise sales. You've known him for quite some time. He made me, for those that don't know, Johnny Adams paints rocks. And if you look over, I guess my right shoulder, there's a San Francisco 49er rock back there. And it's very treasured by myself. I think it's fantastic. He told me you were actually the only 2-time rock recipient. Nobody else has he made 2 rocks for.
And I really wish that you were going to tell me this, or that I was going to know this in advance. I would have had those rocks behind me instead of at my office in Denver. So apparently he found a triangular shaped rock and he made a Lone Peak rock. And he found one that looked like a station wagon and he made a red Pinto wagon rock after my band.
To take one kind of more detour before we jump into the dental side, I noticed that in your career, you also took a detour outside of dental, and you were the co-founder and owner of a company called Bike Tech. And you left, I think you initially started at Heartland, you went to Bike Tech, then you came back into dental. What kind of went into you making that decision? Why did you decide to make the change? And what ultimately brought you back into the dental industry?
I was 11 years with Heartland, started out when they had about 30 practices, and I was working the front desk of one of the original practices in Springfield, Illinois. I got to witness the growth. I got to be a part of the growth. Within a year, I was managing multiple practices. Within 2 years, I was regional director of even more, and then managing a team. And by the time I left, I was managing the largest region in the company, and I had 6 or 7 states, and I was flying out on airplanes every week, a lot of times private jets, which was pretty cool. I don't have that experience anymore, and I really enjoyed it. But what I was recognizing is I was missing out on family. My wife was pregnant with our second child, and I was fortunate to be a part of the early investments with Heartland. And so it seemed to me at about age 38, 39, however old I was, that I was going to settle down. I was going to take my love and passion for cycling and health and fitness and build a new career out of that. And so I bought into a bicycle shop, and I thought, if I could take fragmented bicycle shop, this industry that's also fragmented, and do what we were doing, where combining dental practices and creating an enterprise, doing the same thing with bicycle shops. And I thought, wow, that could be very interesting. And I could take my knowledge from that and my love for health and fitness and create something, unique and different and large and create wealth for myself and family. Well, it didn't work. I didn't know enough about the bicycle industry to realize why that didn't work as well as I thought it would be. And bicycle owners are more emotionally involved in their shops than dentists are in their dental practices. So I couldn't get one of them to sell to me, not one. And I looked at several and met up with lots of people and did my best. And I just found myself in one retail shop selling bikes and gear and determining that this is not where I want to be. So after a few years, I went back into dental.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So when you decided to take that route, I think somebody from the outside would say that, there's obviously going to be some risk associated with that. Do you consider yourself somebody that has like a high risk tolerance? At the time when you were making that kind of career change or pivot, did you view it as risky, or did you kind of enter it from the outset with like the confidence of somebody that doesn't maybe know any better, just saying like, this is going to become successful and that's how it's going to be?
I wouldn't say I'm super risk adverse. However, I do like to take next steps. And how I viewed it first and foremost was, I can ride my bicycle to work. I'm not getting on a plane. I'm going to be close to my family. And no matter what, I'm still the owner of this shop. And the additional risk of bringing on these other bicycle shops into the same bike tech community, that would have been more risky if it would have worked, if I could have gotten people to move forward with that. But I had already seen so many times where we accept the risk moving forward with an acquisition, and it typically has hiccups in the beginning, as they always do. But over 6 months, a year, sometimes 18 months, they're part of the system. They're part of the process, and you've changed out the people that just don't work, and for those people that do, and they get it and they love it, and the new people that you bring in, you now have a working managed practice, where I just assumed I'd be able to do the same thing.
There's kind of that adage that you hear people throw around a lot, that we learn so much from our failures or from things that were not as successful. Do you feel that way when you think about, the time doing bike tech and then the transition back into dental? At the moment, did it feel like something that you would be learning from? And when you kind of look at, the success that you've had, in this industry and all the positions that you've held in the last 7 years at Lone Peak, do you recognize some learnings that came from that time outside of dental? Or was there anything that, you think that it helped actually accelerate you in a way that maybe was unexpected?
The 11 years I was with Heartland, I was in a well-run, well-managed, well-thought-out, organized company. If you needed a doctor for one of the practices, I think at the time I had 65 practices under my region. A doctor showed up. Like, I didn't know all the back end, all the challenges that it takes to recruit a doctor. I just knew that I'd call up Nancy and a doctor would show up within a few weeks. Same thing with team members and their training and all the additional training that we were given in leadership and in management and in same store growth and P&L training and everything that goes along with that. So the success that I had mostly, same with the Army, is just kind of doing what you're supposed to do and learning as much as you can and applying what you've learned. That's where I got all my success there. The bicycle shop, I think it was mostly a big learn, because a love of health and fitness and cycling is not the same thing as a love of retail. And I do enjoy building relationships and being a part of conversations with people and helping people get what they need, because I learned that at the front desk at Heartland. You're basically selling treatment. And while you know that they need that treatment, they have to recognize that the amount of money that they're paying for it is less important than what the treatment is. And so as the presenter of that information, you have to be able to present in such a way that you can get them to say yes, because you know it's in their best interest. Same thing for a bicycle. Now, I can sell a $5,000 bicycle way easier than I can sell a $400 bicycle. And it sounds really strange, but somebody who wants a $5,000 bicycle really, really wants it. They're emotionally drawn to it. They really want it, etc. Whereas somebody who has a $400 bicycle, they're going, why is it $400? I can get one at Walmart for $100. So it's like a completely different situation. But all of those learns, all the relationships, all of that stuff was what it was. But going into Decision One Dental, a brand new startup, just a handful of practices, two brothers who were practicing dentists. So there wasn't anybody that was really managing it other than them. But, it's pretty hard to do that one day a month. And to start wearing all of those hats, financial hat, an acquisition hat, a marketing hat, an HR hat. That is a lot. And I didn't realize all the things that were gifted to me as being a part of a large organization like Heartland, and then try to wear all those hats and then take a hat off and hand it over once you have enough EBITDA to do that, and continuing to grow EBITDA so you can take off another hat and continuing to grow again. So that was a big learn, that, all of these things were handed to me. But I think just like in everybody's career, the biggest learns are going to come from failure. And the biggest failures that I have had has been when I'm on my own, because I don't have somebody stopping me from doing it. When I was at Decision One, AJ and Mike were really good at making me see 5 or 6 different sides of something before we'd pull the trigger on it. Whereas here, sometimes you have people that are going, well, he's the CEO, so he must know what he's talking about. And we move forward with it. I learned really quickly that we are a pediatric company, and adding ortho makes a lot of sense. But going outside of that to another portion of our industry, whether it's a GP, buying a GP practice, or buying an oral surgery practice, or buying a standalone orthodontic practice, is way outside of our lane. And we did those things, and we found that we were wrong, and we had to sell all those things off. So yeah, I've personally made a lot of mistakes along the way, and it's made us a better, stronger company, because we say, okay, what did we learn from that? Let's take that and apply it to what we're doing today and make sure we don't do it again.
Do you think that's part of what makes a good CEO? Is there's always going to be mistakes made, and super painful to course correct or to admit, like, hey, this wasn't the correct strategy that we're pursuing. Maybe we shouldn't have bought these practices. Let's go ahead and make a change. I think a lot of people try to hang on to something and make it work for probably too long, which can ultimately be really detrimental for the business. When you think about kind of your role, it is part of your role as a CEO to be willing to pull the plug, even if it is painful or something that you thought was going to work out well.
I pull the plug well in advance of somebody else. We bought a practice in San Antonio, and it was our first move into Texas. And we had 2 offices in Texas, but they were already running when I came on board, and none of the doctors had switched out. So we had the same practices, same doctors. When we bought this practice, the doctor was supposed to stay for a year. She left after 4 months. So we had to rush around to find somebody. And then because we rushed, we didn't replace with the right doctor. And within about 6 or 7 months, he left too. There's a nuance in Texas that I was not aware of, and neither was my team, and it's called dental home. And what happens is if you change your provider, all those patients get a letter stating, hey, here's your new provider. And it's not the one that we are. Whereas in most places, you change your provider and all the patients stay. And in a pediatric practice, the parents just want to know that they have a good provider, that they're nice. So we lost a ton of patients when the first provider left. The ones that we saved, we lost again. And so all of those patients, we were hemorrhaging patients, and then of course hemorrhaging revenue. We weren't getting the revenue that we had before. We took 2 years or maybe even 3 more years after that to decide this isn't working. Let's shut it down. We probably lost way more money than we should have. And I tried about every summer. I said, is this the year that we shut this down? And no, I think that this is, and I listened to my team, and which you're supposed to, but when ultimately it's the biggest decisions, sometimes the CEO just has to step in and make them.
You mentioned that, you lost a provider earlier than anticipated, and then you brought in another provider and it was the wrong provider. As you look to hire doctors, or what are some of the most important things that help you understand whether or not they're going to be a good fit organizationally and culturally and kind of really align with your cultural values at Lone Peak?
Well, I'm going to first start off by saying that pediatric dentists and GPs who love working with kids usually have the best personalities. I've worked with lots and lots of dentists, and I feel very strongly that it's a great industry, and our doctors, 95% of the doctors that I've worked with have great personalities and low egos. But it's even more evident when you look at pediatric specialists and with GPs who enjoy working with kids. The level of ego is really low. They're just having fun, and they love that they're having fun. We have that benefit of most of our doctors being like super fun, super energetic, and in some cases very, very kid-like, similar to me. We start off, first of all, with our Indeed ads and any other ads or any other things that we're doing, getting in front of our doctors, where we talk about the love of working with kids, the mission that we provide, because we are a community-based dental service group. So we are 70 to 75% Medicaid. And we have PPOs, and we treat cash patients too, but the majority of our patient population is Medicaid patients. And so we put that way up front. We ensure that we are aligning our mission with their values and aligning our values with their mission. And so we have less applicants because we state it right off the bat. If you're coming to work with Lone Peak, this is what it's going to look like for you. Do you love working with kids? Do you love having busy days? Do you love having a large staff? Do you love having, and we keep that as the positive instead of a negative, because there are people that absolutely love it. And quite frankly, they do well financially. And so our retention rate, because we're already hiring for people for what they love, and that fits into our culture really well, and that they're mission oriented, but then they also make a very, very good income. So our retention rate is exceptional.
I love that. You're setting the expectations right off the bat. I like that you talk about the ego piece. We're reading a book in our company book club right now, our sales team book club. It's called it's a Patrick Lencioni book about being a team player. It's like great team player, something like that.
The Ideal Team Player.
Ideal Team Player. Thank you.
It's my favorite book.
It's awesome. And they talk about being humble, hungry, and smart as kind of like the three, pillars that you look for when you're bringing somebody on board. And like, as I was hearing you talk, like some of this is resonating in my head, and it's been something that I've been thinking a lot more about as well. Can you talk a little bit about the strategy that you've had with Ortho? So you mentioned, knowing what you're good at and doing things that make sense. How are you looking at that? How are you incorporating that into your business? And what are maybe some of the challenges that you didn't anticipate or that surprised you a little bit in building that business?
Sure. So we had Ortho when I came in a handful of practices, let's say 6, maybe 7. And it was more of just an adjunct. It didn't provide much of a benefit. And in some ways, we weren't even tracking it to where it was separated out from the other revenue. We didn't track starts. We didn't track consults. It was just there. There were benefits to it for sure, but we were recognizing that our practices that had Ortho were actually no more or no less profitable than the ones that didn't. We didn't understand why that was. And when we dug into it, we actually found out that the Ortho piece wasn't giving us a level of profit that one would expect. It was, in fact, in some cases, it was pulling down and pulling away from the pedo profit. So we did a quick analysis as to why that was, and we decided, well, why don't we focus on it? Because we've never focused on it. So we brought in an expert that had been an operator in Ortho, and we had her do an assessment and decide how can we make this better. And within 6 months, just those same practices, we started tracking our consults, tracking our starts, and seeing what our percentages were, and figuring out, well, how do we get more consults? Because if we could change the start percentage, we would. But if we could change the consults and keep the percentage the way it is, okay, maybe that's going to work too. So figured out how to get our doctors on board on getting more consults, et cetera, et cetera. And we saw an uptick almost immediately. And we started to recognize and pull apart the P&Ls and show the P&L for the orthodontics was actually growing rapidly, exponentially, where the pedo revenue, basically the pedo revenue and EBITDA stays the same. You might have a 2, 3, 4% growth opportunity, whereas the ortho had just exponential growth opportunity. So once we recognized that, okay, it can be successful, because you hear from everybody else like, oh my God, it's a game changer. And then we just outlined, okay, well, what will it look like? Which are the offices that we can add to it first? Because we had at the time probably 60 offices, 40 of which made sense. And why wouldn't one make sense? Well, you don't want to push pedo revenue out for ortho revenue. And you can't just expect that everybody's going to open up on Saturdays or some day that you're not currently open. And you want it to be a full ortho day. So we looked at practices that had space, or didn't have space constraints, or had a day opening, like maybe they were closed on Fridays or closed on Mondays or something like that. And we went to them first, and we started setting up if we had, we need an orthodontist once a week. We need to build up all of our consults in advance so that they can hit the ground running. We also looked at payers. We didn't see a difference between our offices that have Medicaid or accept Medicaid for ortho than the states that don't accept Medicaid for ortho. The only difference is you don't have a 2 to 3 month lag on waiting for it to be denied before you can go and present the treatment plan to the patient. Whereas in some other states like South Carolina, they don't cover it at all. So you just go directly to the sales process. So there's just a couple of differences there. We added, I want to say 12 in the last 24 months, 12 practices. And this year, we're adding 14. We've already added 2. I think we're adding 2 this month. And then the back half of the year be a little more than that. Hiring the orthodontists is not the most challenging, because there are a lot of orthodontists that have to piece their schedules together, and they're working 2 days in this office, 1 day in this office, et cetera. The biggest challenge is when there is an orthodontic change, because while the end result is straight teeth, there's like 30 different ways to get there. There's 5 or 6 different systems that they can use. and just making sure that everybody has the same kind of process for getting there is, the way you're learning, the way you're taught in school. And we don't have, it's not like I've got an orthodontist that runs the company where all the orthodontists come in and train. So that would be our next big clinical hire, will be an orthodontist that really gets everybody on the same system, the same processes, so that we're consistent throughout.
Is there much disruption for the offices as you're adding ortho and establishing ortho business within those practices? And is there any pushback or uncertainty from the?
Are you talking to my team?
Yeah, not talking to your team. It's one of those things where even good change is always met with doubt or concern by the folks that are there currently. And I was just kind of curious if that was the case in this instance as well, and how you manage through that.
Of course there is. You're asking people to work more for the same, whether it's usually the operation manager. Somebody might call him the office manager, but the person who is running and managing that dental practice, that's the person that's going to have the most work put on them, because not only now are they responsible for the pediatric revenue and success, but now they're responsible for ensuring that all of this other orthodontic revenue gets captured. And the challenges of whether or not you take the dental assistants that you have and teach them ortho, or if you bring in a one-day person a week. And there are some times where the orthodontist will bring that group with them because it's their team from their office. So we've got a lot of different mechanisms going on at the same time, but absolutely there's pushback. So first of all, we do the what's in it for me. What benefit is that person going to get out of it? And that includes the doctor, because whether they're a partner doctor or they're an associate doctor, they're going to be disrupted as well. Whether they come in on Monday and it's different because the Friday orthodontic team made a mess, or they're hearing all the complaints from everybody about the orthodontist, or whatever it is, there's always going to be something. So we, of course, have to go back to what's in it for you. If you're an owner, obviously, there's going to be an improvement in your EBITDA. And we show them the calculation beforehand. We provide guidance, but we never tell our doctors what to do. And we haven't had any doctor say no once they completely understand it. All of our doctors have moved forward. And that's even having to buy sometimes a $35,000 Ceph. So, there is an investment, but if they can see that benefit in the future, they'll certainly, they certainly take it under high consideration. So that's how we manage through that. Make sure that there's something in it for them. And of course, the processes and the support that we give.
So for an owner doctor, that makes a lot of sense. And you can really lay out what the ROI is and why it makes a lot of sense. You were talking about the biggest challenge, and I'm sorry, I think you said practice manager, or what is?
Yep, operations manager.
Operations manager. That's right. Probably the individual that has the biggest challenge, that would be the most challenging to get buy-in. What is the why for that particular individual? How do you get the buy-in? Or does it kind of have to be like, this is what is best for this practice, and we need you to buy in as a result, and you're going to level up your skills and learn a new business, and kind of taking that approach. What's your thought on that portion of it?
Always take it to the patient first. When you know that they're referring out these folks, if they're referring out to a competitor that also has pedo, well, obviously that's not going to help them. Their job is going to be harder because they're going to have to replace those patients. Because ultimately, if you're a parent and you're going to a practice that has ortho and they also have pedo, why would you go back to the other practice? I mean, you'd have to really have a commitment to the other practice if the convenience factor doesn't win. So that's one. Number two, there are a lot of providers in our areas that will not accept the insurance that we will accept. And so we can take it to the financial portion of it. Like, even if we're seeing PPOs, we're going to be able to provide the same level of service at a lesser expense. And then the third thing that they're going to appreciate about it is kids that, and we've actually proven this out statistically, is that kids that are doing ortho, they make their 6-month recare appointments to the exact 6 months, because they're already coming. And so they're getting their 6-month recare appointments in. And part of their bonuses are based on how their 6-month, how the retention of our patients are, as well as bonuses based on their EBITDA, as well as bonuses based on their patient flow. So now you've got reasons for the patient, which will tie, because if you ask every single team member in our company, why do they love their job or what do they love most about their job? None of them say that they love sterilizing instruments. You'll have a few crazy ones that love AR, but for the most part, it's because they love the kids and they really care about what they're doing. And so we always go to the mission and to the kids first. And then the second thing is how does this benefit you? And we have bonuses for our start bonuses, so that if they reach or exceed their start bonus goals, then that operation manager gets bonused on that as well. So there's a whole lot of reasons for them to want to do it. And you had brought up the additional skill set. I don't have these conversations directly with each one of the operation managers when we're adding it. But if they don't, if our regional managers or our regional directors don't bring that in, I'm definitely going to make sure that they do, because that's also something else. It's like you're learning something you're not going to get by continuing to do what you do every single day. This is going to be great for you. You know, it'll help you if you're looking to grow into your next role as a regional manager. Regional managers have to have an ortho background. You can't add ortho to a practice if you don't have the knowledge.
I like how you guys align incentives. You talk about the different bonus plans and for the different outcomes that you're looking to achieve. Is that something that you've had to put a lot of thought into or make tweaks or changes over time? Does it get modified frequently, or do you feel like it's pretty dialed in at this point where it's like, here's the structure, here's how we compensate based off achievement, and we feel like this is, pretty set with where it's at today?
Yeah, I think with our regional managers, we have it dialed in, and it hasn't changed in the last 2 or 3 years. And even this year, around October, November, our COO was going through different scenarios, and we ended up settling on the scenario that we have. So it must be the right one, figuring out the things that we want to ensure are happening, incentivizing for that success. Now, we have also found that there are a few areas where we tweaked. So, for example, and you had all of your other things going great, but your accounts receivable was, like what, in the toilet, then you forfeited your bonus because of that. And the reasoning or the thought process behind that was don't focus so much on revenue and team percentage of salary, et cetera, at the detriment of collecting the money. And so that was the reasoning. But we found that there were too many times where it was outside of their control, and they forfeited so we took that away. We adjusted a few things and just gave a bonus if they were on this, so their quarterly bonus had like 4 or 5 different things, AR being one of the reasons, instead of forfeiting, just providing an additional incentive. So there are things that we tweak. At the office operation manager role, we changed that, I think, based on what our initiatives are, because most of our initiatives are driven at the practice, whether it's same day care or show rate. Because in our world, if you're running a 70% show rate, that's pretty good. Sounds crazy coming out of like a Heartland or a Decision One that's all PPO and fee for service, where 100%, 105%, because you're adding people in. So 70%, and obviously we manage our schedules based on that. So those are the kind of things that we want our practice, our operation managers really focused on, because there are things that you do that give that result. And so as long as those things are being done, your recare, your confirmation policies, all of those things that keep patients coming through the door. And then when you have them in the door, we say the 3 Ps. If it's good for the patient, the parent, and the practice, we should always do it. And if a kid is coming in and they're just coming in for a cleaning and they need sealants, which take us 8 minutes, 4 minutes, why reschedule them? Just do it. It doesn't cost the parent any money. It's good for the patient. If you know they only show up 70% of the times, that means 30% of the times they're not coming back. So it's those kind of things. It's good for the patient. It's good for the parent. It's good for the practice. They don't have to take off work. We get a little bit more revenue because of it. But the fact is that we're helping out the kid, and we want to make sure that that we're creating those healthy habits that last a lifetime.
Good lens to view things through. I'm sure it's very appreciated by the patients and the parents. And you mentioned a couple times being a mission-driven company. Can you talk a little bit about what that means for Lone Peak?
For the practices, their mission is really focused on treating the community, regardless of the ability for the patient to pay or what financial concerns that the patient has or who the state payer is, whatever that is. That's really focused around ensuring that all the kids are getting treatment and that we're creating healthy habits that last a lifetime. That's the second time you've heard me say that. And what I mean by that is when a kid comes through the door, if they're going to the dentist at a young age, you go to the doctor when you have something wrong. I was fortunate. I never had a cavity. I had really crooked teeth, but I never had a cavity. So I never had pain. I didn't know I didn't have a cavity. I just never had pain. I never went to the dentist as a kid. Not one time, not once. And so then as an adult, luckily I joined the Army. And when they did my exam for the first time, they said, "Hey, you don't have any cavities." I'm like, "Okay, great." They said, "But you've got a crossbite, you got this, you got that. You want us to fix that?" I'm like, "Heck yeah." So since I worked in the dental practice and we had an oral surgeon, endodontist, and orthodontist, all these people in that same thing, I was able to get like $50,000 worth of work for free. If you see my x-rays though, you'll freak out because I've got pins and needles and everything all up in my face. But I have straight teeth. And funny thing, I just came from the dentist and she was like, "Oh, what did you have done?" Because they did some, the bite wings, and she was a new hygienist that hadn't worked on me before. So she's like, "What did you have done to your palate?" So anyway, let me get back to this. When you see somebody for the first time, there are 2 things that we see, and we make decisions based on that person by these 2 things: their hair and their teeth. As soon as you see them, immediately when you see somebody, you make, unfortunately, it's a biased decision. And if you see somebody has healthy teeth, what are the things that you think of? You think healthy, you think intelligence, you think they take care of themselves, and it all happens in a split second, and you can't change that. So let's go back to childhood. If somebody has been going to the dentist regularly, over and over again, they're creating a healthy habit that is going to last a lifetime. And they're going to make sure that their kids do the same thing. And that's going to help them in interviews. That's going to help them in relationships. That's going to help them in a whole bunch of other things. Not to mention that 40%, 50% of all kids are on Medicaid. And that the number one reason why kids miss school is for mouth pain and unmet treatment needs. And kids that are of lower income families are twice as likely to have unmet treatment needs. So we're providing a huge service for this population. And if we can get them to come every 6 months, so we are diligent in the recare process, scheduling them in advance. We're diligent in the confirmation process, ensuring that they're showing up for their appointments. And if they miss their appointments, we're calling them right away. All of these things so that we can continue to create healthy habits that last a lifetime. That is our mission. because we believe that it's best for the kids and not just best for us.
It is a cheat code for better quality life. I mean, you're essentially laying the foundation to avoid those like snap judgments that people have of folks when they don't have good oral health. And I hadn't thought of it in that way before, but it makes a ton of sense. And it is a really important service that you guys are providing. When you think about your role as CEO, what's the most important thing? What's your focus? How do you know what to pay attention to?
Every year we put out 3 initiatives for the company. And I want to make sure that those initiatives are company initiatives that are being led by me. And so this year it's an unwavering investment in our people. It is expanding access to care for our patients. And the third one is scaling up we're calling scaling up performance, which is, we've shortened it to SUP, but then people think we're talking about stand-up paddleboarding. So I try to always say scaling up performance. Every company, no matter how big you are, you're going to have a 10% that 10% of your offices that are just not meeting the thresholds. They're running low margins or even upside down. And every month you just keep looking at them and hoping and praying that things will get better, or coming up with excuses as to why to support the reason why it continues to sit that way. Well, not this year. So I'll start with scaling up performance first, and then we'll work backwards. We have put together, I feel like I'm giving out too many secrets here, but what we've decided is that it's real easy for us to look at a P&L, look at the KPI reports, assess the practice, and say, hey, here are your action plans. Get to work. Whether it goes top down or regional director over, whatever it is. But that just, people don't buy in. We've been doing that for years, and we're not seeing a difference. So instead, what we decided to do was we go there, we sit with the team, me included, and we bring all of that information to the entire team. We shut the office down for 4 hours and go through what's going well, what's not going well, and we let them tell us. I don't tell them one thing. I let them tell me everything. I let them create the action plans. We let them create their goals. And then we put encouragement around those goals or incentive around those goals. And it is amazing of what has changed in those 8 practices that we put in the scaling up performance group this year. Amazing changes. And while 4 of them have had like a pivotal change that I wouldn't have even expected, another 4 are having incremental changes and will continue to stay in this program. And in fact, tomorrow is our first of the second round with one of our offices. So we had the first one in the beginning of the first quarter, and now we're having the second one in the beginning of the second quarter for these 2 offices here in Colorado. So I'll be attending those 2. And I'm really excited about it because now we get to share where they were and what successes that they've had since then. And we get to go, okay, now that you've fixed what's broken, what do you want to do? We're not going to say that tomorrow, but we were fixing what was broken. When your show rate is 55% and the rest of the company is 70%, there's something broken. Shouldn't be that way.
You mentioned that you went in person and you shut down the office and you have these in-person meetings, an intensive, for lack of a better term. It sounds like, you're really digging in to the business with the ultimate goal for the practice itself to come to the conclusion of things that need to be done. Because when they're the ones that are suggesting some of these changes, obviously the buy-in is going to be significantly more. How important was it to do that in person versus, hey, we're going to set up some Zoom call or Teams call or try to do this through remote meetings? And was that a thought process in the strategy, like we've just got to be there in order for this to be successful?
I thought about the Zoom meeting for less than 1 second. When you're trying to make a pivotal change or a huge change like this, we didn't just go in and shut down the office for 4 hours. We actually had a pre-call with the doctor and their operation manager and the regional manager and gave them the whole why. And we didn't tell them that, and maybe they're listening, maybe they're not. I mean, they probably figured it out. We didn't tell them that they were broken. We didn't tell them that they had a problem. We told them that they were on the cusp of greatness because they have all the elements, all the ingredients for success. They're all right there. You got a great doctor, a great operation manager, a great location. You don't have anything that's stopping you, but something's missing. And what is that that's missing? So we have the pre-call. And then the night before, take the doctor out to dinner, operation manager, regional director, whoever the heck is there. And we just have fun, meet each other, understand who we all are. We talk about things. I bet you it's 15 minutes of work, if at all. I still expensed it. Then we go and I'm a pretty funny guy and I can engage pretty well with a lot of people because I was a dental assistant. I was a front desk person. I was a hygienist. I was a regional manager. I was a regional director. You know what I mean? So like all of these folks can look at me and say, that guy has done my job. He's not some Harvard grad that was plopped in there by private equity. He actually knows what he's talking about. Not to say that a Harvard grad doesn't know what he's talking about. Not that private equity plops in people that don't know what they're talking about, but the connection is there. So that is a very important piece too. And when you're there in front of people and you're making them laugh, and I mean, I've got a flip chart behind me. I'm writing with colored markers. I'm joking around with them. And then of course we're giving them lots of coffee and bagels and stuff like that too. And throwing candy at them or whatever. And then lining it up with what they want. Nobody wants to be unsuccessful. Everybody wants to be successful. You don't go to work so that you can sit around and look at each other and go, God, I wish I had a patient in here today. So it could be an office that's only seeing 12 patients a day and they should be seeing 25 or they're equipped to see 25. It could be that their show rate sucks and it just keeps falling off. You know, I mean, that creates complacency and nobody wants that.
I love that you guys take this from a position of positivity and with an assumption of positive intent. Like everyone wants to be better. Nobody wants this. You show up and you frame it as you're poised to be more successful than you can imagine. When you first started to share about this program, my initial thought was, okay, so you're highlighting an office that's having a challenge, or if I want to align it with like my business, it could be, hey, this particular business unit is more challenged than others. And like, hey, you guys aren't being as successful is a completely different message than you're only a few things away from being incredible. And I really love that was the approach that you guys took on that. And I imagine that has to make an enormous difference in the acceptance of the effort. It's the whole carrot versus, the stick piece. And really, I think it seems to align very much with how you guys look to have your culture across your entire organization. So yeah, I think you are giving away some secrets, but they're good ones. And I think it's a really useful approach.
If another person hears what I'm saying, thinks about their organization and go, you know what, I've got these 4 offices that are constantly, try it, man. Give me a call. Like, I know I say I'm giving away secrets. I work with the DEO a lot. I talk to the same, I talk to young CEOs and I give away as many things as I can. Somebody did it for me, like that's not my idea. I would say I've done it so many times because it was really something that came from Heartland. They call them Thrive meetings. I know I embraced it more than most people did. And I had a lot of offices, so I did a lot of them. But now tomorrow, I am not the presenter. Our regional director is, and our regional manager is, and our COO is. But they've witnessed me do it at least 3 or 4 times. And so now they know what to do. And I'm just going to be there to give pointers. And I do talk way too much. So I have to keep, reminding myself like, this isn't your time to talk, bro.
I want to be conscious of your time, and I really appreciate you spending so much with us. Can we talk a little bit about your nonprofit and why you decided to launch that? Why Alzheimer's, and share a little bit of the story of how this came to be.
So you mentioned I'm a musician. I was a drummer from like age 10 until probably, I don't know, I gave up the sticks around age 30. I was playing in bands in high school and while I was in the Army, not the Army band, and in college, loved playing music, took up the guitar just for fun because the drums take up a lot of space and a lot of noise. And I now had a family. So I just kind of started barely learning how to play the guitar. When I moved out here 6 or 7 years ago, my family was still in Chicago and I didn't have, other than traveling to meet all the practices and everything, I had some free time. So started really learning the guitar, met a guy in our neighborhood that plays. And then he and I just started doing a couple of things. He was on the board or is on the board for the Alzheimer's Association. His dad is struggling with Alzheimer's. My aunt is struggling with it. Pretty much everybody in our dad band that we formed that all live in our neighborhood, everybody has somebody that touches them or that is touched by Alzheimer's in some way or another. So that's why we chose that. But how it started, we just were playing in a brewery. It was probably our second show. And we had a whole bunch of our friends there, and we just decided that we were going to donate everything that we made and take donations. And we talked to the bar owner and we talked to the food trucks, and we just had them donate 10% of their revenue to Alzheimer's. We gave away like $1,500 that night, and we didn't think much of it. We didn't have a name for it. The following year, that's when we said, "Hey, we're gonna make this. Let's go ahead and do that." And we were a little bit better that year, but not much. So then the third year was when I just thought, why don't we just do something crazy? I think it would be a lot of fun for a dad band to put together something really special. And we hired a national act, and we all live in the same neighborhood. So it's not that money doesn't mean anything, but it's if we didn't make enough to support all of this stuff, we would be okay. And so we hired a national band. We brought in a stage and we figured out permitting and porta potties and all this stuff. And it's just amazing what the five of us could do, not really knowing what to do. We'd never done anything like this. We donated, after all that was paid, we donated over $15,000. And what we learned from that was we had a lot of expenses. So we would have donated way more money if we didn't have so many expenses. How do we get away from the expenses? And so this past year in November, we did it at a big venue in Parker, where he let us have all the stage, the sound man, the everything. And so all those expenses, porta potty, permitting, all that stuff went away. And then we just had an expense for the band, not our band. We did everything for free. And then one of my buddies, he owns a dental marketing company. He has a friend who's a national country star. And so he was there. So it was really cool to have these connections that can bring in people for a cause and really do something that is quite special. There's not a lot of people that get up on a really big stage and perform. There's not a lot of people that get to donate, $20,000, $30,000 to an organization. It's from having fun, really just having fun and giving back. And the Alzheimer's people come and volunteer and help with all of it. And we're their second largest donor, except this, like each year they have a walk. That's their largest. Yeah. And then us.
Oh, that's incredible. Are you doing it again this year?
We hope to. We've had a few changes in our band lineup. A lot of people are focusing on family because their kids are getting to the age where they're more fun. Hockey is more important than playing in a band. Your son's hockey team, and I can't blame them.
I appreciate the time. One last question, and we'll wrap it. But you mentioned having some favorite books. Where do you go to learn? Like, what books do you read? Do you have any that you'd recommend? Any podcasts that you listen to?
My favorite author is Patrick Lencioni. The Ideal Team Player, you mentioned that, and every single manager, regional manager, anybody with leadership, I call and I speak to, and I have a 30-minute conversation, and I give my 3 beliefs about all the team members in our whole company. And then I give the 3, the humble, hungry, and smart. I word it a little bit differently because not everybody knows what hungry means. Not everybody knows what smart means. So hardworking, good with people, and humble. Those are the three virtues you have to come with. And you cannot fix people. You do not have a DeLorean and a flux capacitor to go back in time and to fix somebody. So when you're hiring people, make sure that they have these three virtues, and here's how you search for those. So I do that with every single team member. So I'm really glad you brought that up. He has other great books too. So, that's one.
We just read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team also, which is another really great one by him. Yep.
We used that for one of our executive team offsites. It was basically that whole book, and it made a huge difference for us. And we've carried that through even the last 2 years since we've had it. Love Simon Sinek, all of those things. As far as podcasts, I listen to yours. I listen to Tusk, Kevin Cumbus at Tusk. I like listening to his podcast because I like to hear what he's saying to the brokers. I think DSO Secrets is a good one. And then when you get outside of our industry, All In is a really good podcast. There's a lot of parallels that come from other industries. Some of it has nothing to do with it, but the 4 guys are pretty funny. And Sachs is the smartest guy on the planet. So, really good one. And then for fun, I like to listen to Smartless. And then Between Two Ferns, you just got
it. That's right. Little Zach Galifianakis.
Zach, yeah.
Eric's idea was we should name this podcast Between Two Molars. And I said I'm not nearly funny enough for that to be the name of this podcast. But
yeah, well, it would have to be just dry humor all the time. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, well, Ray, hey, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike. I'm glad you asked me to do it. Happy to do it.
Yeah, thank you. The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.